Okay, so by environment, if you are in the state of Massachusetts working on an ambulance, you generally do not talk to the hospital directly unless it's a critical patient. You call this center, they call it CMED. You call them and tell them, I got a status 3 patient. So the person's completely stable, going to Lawrence General. And they might say age, sex, chief complaint. And you tell them 44-year-old male, deformed left ankle. Okay. And they'll make the phone call. They'll turn around, pick up a phone. The phone at the, Lawrence General will ring. Somebody will pick it up and go, hey, it's CMED. You got Trinity 5 minutes out with a broken ankle. And that's it. Here in New Hampshire, we talk to the hospitals every time, whether it's by phone or radio. So that's an environmental aspect of it. Also, when you're in the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and if you're on the eastern half of the state, you're pretty much within cell service of any tower. Up here, it's not so. In the towns that I cover in the Ossipee Valley, there's a lot of times we do not have cell phone coverage. I'm on scene a couple weeks ago with somebody who was dead and is now alive, and I need to talk to the ER doc. Can't do it. My lovely 5G phone has 1 bar of service and won't let me connect. I had to go borrow somebody's 4G phone so I could make a phone call. Because then I turned around and said, you guys got a landline? Nope. So environment, that plays a part in environment also. I have 45-minute transport times almost every call. There are times I can't reach a hospital by radio either from the scene. So environment plays a part in it. The louder the scene is, the louder the environment. If you're on a motor vehicle accident on the highway, and I have a stable patient, I don't worry about it. But if I want a trauma team activation, I call from the street. I get right on the radio, I call the ER and say, hey, I've got a trauma team activation. We're still on scene. We're gonna be on scene another 15 or 20. We'll see you guys in 45. I'll give you a call when we're 15 minutes out. And that gives them time to get people moving. Hard to do that when you can't reach the hospital though, okay? So the environment plays a part in it. Any of the county jails, you go in there and there's so much cement and metal, it's hard to get any sort of a signal out. Luckily, they have regular phones though. So we also have a sender and a receiver, and this doesn't matter whether it's written, face-to-face, or radio communications. The sender, I love this. The first line in the notes that I wrote down, the first line from the book was credibility. The sender has to have credibility. A lot of these ERs we go into, they don't know us. I mean, even though I've been around as long as I have, I go into ERs and I don't know anybody because they've had such big turnover. So how do we, somebody tell me how we convey credibility over a radio so that they actually listen to us? Because if they think you're an idiot, they think you don't know what you're talking about. Unfortunately, they don't listen very well. So how do we convey credibility?
Identify the service that you're working for.
Well, that helps, but that doesn't give you credibility. Liam, you were leaning forward.
Yeah, I was going to say identify which type of bus you're coming in on.
Oh, bus. I hate that phrase. Buses are yellow. They have 52 kids in them.
Okay.
Anyway, no.
That's my New York days. Sorry.
No, that's okay, dude. People use that term. Yeah. But if you call in the state of New Hampshire, you can attend in the back of the truck as an EMR, as a first responder, whatever EMR. And you can convey credibility just by being calm, cool, collected, and professional on the radio. If you're rambling, you are just hopping all over, right? We've got A to Z that we want to travel on that radio. And if you're doing this, and they can't keep track of what you're saying, that's a big issue. Some areas, like in Mass, they want to know whether you're an ALS or BLS truck. I get that. Up here, it's more, do you sound like you know what you're talking about? You know, if you're panicking or you're just all over the place. Now, people understand there's always a first time to do a radio call, right? So like when I'm on a truck with a student, and I've done this in my own town when I was volunteering, on the back of a piece of paper, I literally wrote out, took me about a minute, and I wrote out a script. And the first time I did that, I handed it to my daughter. And I said, here, do the call-in. And she got these big deer in the headlight eyes, and then she read it off. And if you have to do that when you're starting, that's okay. Take some notes. Come up with a routine. You do it the same way every time, so you're not hopping all over the place. And the more of a routine you have, the less panicky you should feel that you're going to forget something. Okay? If you use big words that you're having trouble with, you sound like an idiot. So appropriate words, appropriate language. Now, you can drop a bomb on the radio by accident, and if it's appropriate, nobody's going to care. Okay? But when you're doing a call-in, pretty much it should just be crystal clear, A through Z in line. So that gives you credibility. Also, if you go in and out of the same ER all the time, they're going to get to know you. They're going to get to know your voice. And if you do that same thing in the room when you turn the patient over, if you're just clear and concise, hey, this is what we did, this is what's going on, do you have any questions? And you act professional with them, and you aren't staring at parts of their anatomy, and you're not making wise-ass comments and hitting on staff, then you get treated like a professional. So right, first time you talk to them to the 1000th time, we talked about first impressions the other night. You know, you can only make one. So that's important. Now, appearance. My fire chief, my old fire chief, and I say old, he was 75 at the time, he used to get pissed off at me because I'd show up, volunteer service, I'd show up the way I was out on the street. You know, so if I was in a t-shirt, shorts, and sandals, that's how I showed up. And he said and this is an old school fire chief, you know, and he was like, that's not professional. Like, I don't know, chief, has anybody complained to you? He goes, well, no. I said, why? He goes, well, because you walk in there and you may have shorts and sandals on, but you're professional with them. I said, exactly. And he shook his head and was like, oh, you got me. So how you present yourself is just as important, body language wise as well as verbally, right? At night, Dover Fire can walk in wearing fire pants and a Union t-shirt, but that's okay. As they're going to be treated the same as if they had a button-up shirt on if they present themselves that way. Okay, so how we present ourselves, how we get that message across, very important. We have to be respectful and have empathy for the people we're talking to. And that's the patients, that's the families, it's also the ER staff. Especially right now, these ER staffs are overwhelmed. They do not have good days right now. The first summer of COVID, right, 2020, oh, the ERs were great. Our ER volumes were down like 50 to 60%. We loved it, the staff did. Nobody wanted to come to an ER because they were afraid of getting COVID. Now, everybody's coming back to the ER for everything, and COVID. So they're all swamped. Nurses have been quitting. They can't recruit. So have some empathy for them when you walk in there too, and that helps. Nonverbal. Body language is a big deal. I've been in meetings where people have actually made comments about my body language because I'm sitting back with my arms crossed, and they say, well, why aren't you being open to this? I'm open to it. I'm involved. I'm taking part. Well, you're closed up physically. It's body language. I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm comfortable. There's no arms on my chair. So it's made me realize how important body language is. You know, you walk into a call and you stand there and go, so why'd you call the ambulance? And you're frowning. They think you're mad at them for calling. Okay. So body language is a big deal. Smiling, frowning, making faces, rolling your eyes. Some people, they're eye rollers and don't realize it. You know, that people, you roll your eyes and somebody's going to get offended at the scene or in the ER. And at that point, you're done. It's going to be hard to overcome that, at least on that one call. Now, everybody here has heard this someplace, whether it's on a fire call, EMS call, or at the local McDonald's drive-through. Honey, chief, bub, sweetie. That offends a lot of people. I'm not this super politically correct guy. I mean, I think it's crap we're taking statues of, you know, old dead people down, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that you call somebody honey, you can alienate her. Okay, so pet names are bad. If you are in that habit, please get over it. Now, I was not brought up in an environment where I was required or even expected to call people ma'am or sir. My neighbors, my friends' parents were Jim and Nancy, Ed, and whatever, right? I mean, we called them by their first names. In the military, I call people, you know, officers, sir or ma'am. In EMS, I got into that habit. 3 times maybe in my whole career, I've called somebody sir and upset them, you know, and I'm not a sir. Oh, okay. Which branch of the service were you in? You know, and it's like a sergeant major or a first sergeant. Okay, I get that. And I'll just joke with them, I go, hey, I'm sorry about that. You know, that's just the way I was brought up. And they get it because that's the system they had their whole career field in, right? Calling people ma'am and sir. So they understand that. And I'd rather somebody be upset at me for calling a ma'am or sir than sweetheart or chief. So when I go to, I don't know, this is 6 months ago, I went to a drive-through. I don't remember what brand of drive-through. And there was like this 17-year-old girl who called me honey. I'm 55 years old. I'm not your fucking honey, you know, in my mind. I wanted to reach through and grab her by the throat, but I didn't. You go down south, it's a different thing. You get into North Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, they use honey all the time, and it does not, nobody down there gets upset by it. That's how they were brought up. So just keep that in mind. Sir, ma'am. I walk into a call and I always go, hey, my name's Kevin. I'm one of the medics. What do you like to be called, sir? Tom. Okay, Tom. And I sit there and I say it to myself about 10 times because I'm horrible with names. Tom. And then I call him sir half the time because I can't remember Tom. Okay. But I've introduced myself. I shake their hand, male or female, doesn't matter. Young or old, does not matter. And the other thing I do a lot with older and younger is when I shake my hand, I might put my hand on top of theirs for just a second. It's a human touch that makes people feel like you care. Whether you do or not, make them feel like you care. The other thing I do at that point is I spin my hand over so that I can feel their radial pulse, right? So that's the artery that runs along the radial bone, radial pulse. And I can feel that. And all I'm looking for right now is kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I don't want to count. I don't want to know a number. I want to know, oh, it's too slow. Oh, it's too fast. Oh, it's just right. So I'm looking at the speed of their pulse. I'm also touching their skin, and it tells me whether they're clammy, cold, sweaty, hot, dry. In a matter of 5 seconds, they have answered me. I know what their mental status is, and I know how their heart and blood vessels are working right now. 5 seconds. And I've set a good tone with them by being respectful of them. I can't emphasize that enough. You know, I joke a lot on scenes. And I think I can do that because I've made them comfortable with me already. You know, and Reader's Digest used to have, they probably still do, but they have this thing called laughter is the best medicine. And it does. People get, if you're tense and it shows, you're scared of what you're dealing with, it's going to show to them. And they're going to get more tense and more anxious, which might increase their heart rate more, which might make them worse. So I try to set them at ease. I don't start right off like a stand-up comedian telling jokes, but I might throw an in here and there, you know. When I'm doing something that is not within their normal environment, like I'm reaching up their shirt, I tell them before I do it. I'm putting electrodes on for my monitor. I'm going to listen to their heart and lungs with my stethoscope. I say, hey, I gotta stick these, I gotta you know, go inside your shirt and put these stickers on. I'm not getting fresh, don't hit me. And everybody chuckles. Or I'll look at the husband, you know, it's a 90-year-old woman. I'll look at the husband and go, hey, I gotta reach up inside her shirt to put these electrodes on. I'm not getting fresh, don't hit me. And he chuckles. But it lets them know that I understand. This is not something usual for them. They don't normally have guys walk in and just reach up their shirts. Now, I've had, typically what I get is, oh, it's okay, you do whatever you have to do. And every once in a while, I'll get one of these cool little old ladies who are in their 80s or 90s, and I quote, oh, it's okay. You know how long it's been since somebody's had their hand up my shirt? You go right ahead. I've heard that numerous times. And now I know how I can interact with them, you know? I say it to guys too. Hey, I'm not getting fresh, don't hit me. If I've got to look at some part of their body that's normally covered by underwear, I let them know, hey, I got to do this. I don't just start reaching, pulling, looking. It's rude and it's unnerving to them too. So try to set them at ease and show them that you're at ease. And I remember the first time I did a lot of things in EMS, and I remember how nervous I was. I mean, my first IV I did in an ambulance, my hand was shaking, and I'm pretty sure I pinned her arm to the stretcher. I just drove that thing into her arm because I was so nervous. So I remember how this goes. But if you get into a routine and let that routine get to be second nature, you get more comfortable and you don't miss things. Excuse me. The other thing would be, if you ask them a question, listen to their answer. That sounds like it's common sense, but I see new EMTs, AEMTs, paramedics, nurses, and doctors who ask a question like, so what's going on today, sir? And they're already thinking of their next question. Okay, so if he's got chest pain, I've got to ask, so do you have any trouble breathing? And a second later, you're like, I'm sorry, what did you say was going on today? They know you're not listening to them. And that sets the tone bad. So ask your question, listen to the answer, think about that for a second, and then ask your next question. It's okay 5 minutes down the road to go, hey, let's review this just for a second, make sure I got this straight. You got some chest pain. It started at noontime while you were mowing the lawn. You haven't had any trouble breathing. You puked twice. You're still having pain. Does that sound pretty accurate? And you impress the hell out of them because they get it. They know that you are listening and that you care about what you're doing for them. Okay. Somebody give me an example of a closed-ended question about pain.
When did this start?
That's open-ended. So, Chris, give me a closed-ended about when did it start. Give me an example of how that would be closed-ended. Right, we want to know when the pain started.
So, like if you're asking a yes or a no question, like, did this hurt yesterday?
Yeah. So open-ended is you ask them a question that allows them to formulate an answer. Closed-ended is like a yes or no. So if you say, did the pain start at noontime? And that's your first question about when it started, and they go, no. Now I got to ask, well, was it at 1? When did the pain start? Open-ended question. Let them formulate the answer. Does your ankle hurt? No. Does your lower leg hurt? No. Does your knee hurt? No. Does your thigh hurt? Yes. Quicker to get to it by going, can you tell me where the pain is, sir? Oh, it's my left thigh. Great. Boom. Now, after that, we're going to make sure that the rest of the leg's okay. But that open-ended question gave us, in the shortest amount of time possible, the starting point for what we want. If you ask, right, we've got 7,000 questions we can ask about the heart, the lungs, the kidneys. It'll take you forever to get to the right answer if you try to ask specifically, does your heart hurt, right? Do you have a cough? Right. But if you go, tell me what's going on. Oh, I'm having pain in my chest. Okay. When did that start? Oh, it started about noontime when I was mowing. So open-ended. There are times we want a very short, concise answer, like they've had chest pain and shortness of breath since noontime, and they're nauseous. Okay, so right now I want a yes or no answer. Have you thrown up? No. Perfect. Time to move on. Okay, everybody follow with that? Now, you're the sender and you're talking to your receiver. The things that influence the receiver, their level of intelligence. And it could be everything from it's a 5-year-old who just hasn't been educated yet to Forrest Gump, right? I'm not a smart man, okay? On that end. Or as I said last night, you could be talking to a physician and not know it. So their IQ, and if you treat them like an idiot, like they're a 5-year-old, that's also negative. So I ask them a couple of open-ended questions, and I start to gather, besides what their complaint is, I start to put together in my mind a picture of how I'm going to interact with them. If this person uses big fancy words, and when I say big fancy, I mean they're medical terms that a regular bystander wouldn't use, like, oh, what kind of medical problems have you had, sir? Oh, I've had myocarditis. Okay. Then we go down that path. Or, sir, what hurts? My left lateral malleolus. Oh, so do you do something in the medical field? Oh yeah, I'm a paramedic. Okay, great. We can talk on that level. Okay. If they use some term that I'm not expecting them to use on a daily basis, I always ask, sounds like you do something in the medical field. And they, oh no, I Googled it or whatever. Okay, and then I can drop back a notch or two. So their IQ, their personality, they may, that, hey, I'm not getting fresh, don't hit me joke may fall completely flat. And I know that they are not open to that sort of joking. So I won't, I'll be more cut and dry. Hey, I have to do this, or I need to do this. And I won't joke with them. But if they're joking with me right from the beginning, then we're going to have a good time in the back of the truck. So personality, their self-esteem is a big deal too. If you have somebody who's severely depressed and they think they're a piece of dog doo-doo, it might be harder to converse with them and to get your point across to them. And you need to be super careful about how you're presenting your presentation. Because if you look like you're not interested in what they're saying, it reinforces the fact that they think they're dog shit. So keep that in mind. Language barriers. Whew. Do any of you speak a second language? No. All right. Yeah, Liam, what do you kind of speak?
I'm dangerous in Spanish.
You're dangerous. Yeah, I can find the bathroom. I can ask for another beer. And it's funny because I've taken Spanish and I don't remember it. So what I recommend, there's a couple of options. One, right, ask family member, can you translate for me? A family member or a friend. Here's an interesting thing though. Hospitals have a policy against family or friends translating if it can be avoided, right? They pay all kinds of money for video translation service. Why do you think they don't want that somebody else translating?
Because it can be interpreted differently.
It can be interpreted differently, and they have their eyes on grandma's life insurance, right? So you can get bad information from them. But for us in the field, that might be our only option. There are apps that you can get on your phone though that translate for you. Also, if you call 911 you're on an ambulance call, you call 911 and say, "Hey, this is Kevin with Action. I'm in Effingham, New Hampshire. I need a translator, please, for Spanish." They'll go, "Yeah, sure. Hold on." State of New Hampshire has a contract with somebody, and they'll put you on the phone with a Spanish English speaker. So I put it on speakerphone. I'll put my phone down right between us, and I'll say, "Hi, this is Kevin. My patient's name is Julio. Can you ask them what's bothering them today?" They ask it. They can hear as well. And so it's a nice open-ended conversation. The one problem I've had with it is you need to be specific. So like I called and the best I could tell them was, all the guy would tell me is Pacific Rim. He couldn't, Malaysia, Pacific Rim, Malaysia. But apparently there's a bunch of different languages within that region and that country. And they couldn't figure it out. And it was a nightmare. So the more specific you can be with language, I mean, Spanish can be different from Central America to Spain, right? So the more specific you can be, the better it is. When I was working the jail last year down in Tampa, a lot of Spanish. And I took some Spanish even last year. I got a couple of different apps on my phone. I don't remember the names of them right now. And at night, I would go through Spanish lessons while I was in my camper down there. But I also took a bunch of index cards and I wrote out, I looked at for the translation, do you have any pain? Donde, where is it, right? And you can have them point. And so I had like 10 different index cards that covered that sort of thing. And it came in handy a few times. At the jail, typically we had somebody who could translate, one of the staff members. But while I was waiting, I could sit there and point at a line on the card. Do you have any pain? Nope. Okay. Do you have any of this? Do you have, all right. So if you're in an area where there's a lot of foreign language, the big cities in Massachusetts, certainly. Manchester, there's a lot of foreign language there. Find out which ones are more common in your area. Manchester's a melting pot because Manchester has for 30 plus years, they've been a receiving community for immigrants. Bosnia, Sarajevo, now Afghanistan, the Southeast Asia. So there's a ton there. So know what your options are and have a few resources available to help you with this. Another issue with the sender, are they being defensive, right? If you've set them off because they don't think you care, then they're going to get defensive. It's going to be hard to break through that. Or if they've had a negative interaction with your service before. Yesterday's ambulance crew went there and that guy was an ass. Well, he's going to assume everybody's an ass until proven otherwise, okay? Some of the problems we run into. Equipment. I already talked about cell phones, cell service, radios, repeaters, phone lines. When we talk about a radio, most of our little handheld radios are either 1 watt or 5 watts of power coming out. You're in downtown Rochester, you should be able to talk to the hospital on a portable radio. You're in Milton, it's not going to happen. Unless you happen to be above the lake and literally that radio wave skips across, skips on Milton Three Ponds, which has happened with me. But otherwise, so you got to know what your equipment will do, and you got to know the limitations of your equipment. You go to the ambulance or the fire truck, that radio is usually 100 watts. You've got a lot more distance. It won't allow you to hear better, but it will allow you to transmit further. Sensory problems. My father's blind. Okay, you're taking care of his father. Blind is an issue because they don't know what you're doing at any given point. So I always ask them how blind. And people are, what do you mean by how blind? They know. If I say, how blind are you, sir? Well, I can see kind of, you're kind of a shadow to me. Okay, can you see when my arm moves towards you? Yes. Okay, great. Because I don't want to startle him. I don't want to just grab his arm to throw something on his finger or grab his hand to poke a needle in his finger for a blood sugar. I've scared him and I've hurt him, and that'll make him defensive. I don't blame him. If he's completely, there's nothing. Every time I'm going to touch him, I say, sir, I'm going to take your blood pressure in your left arm now. Okay? I don't want to startle him. If he's legally blind, can't drive a car, but oh, I can see you fine, then I don't even worry about it. When I get to the hospital, I'm going to tell them what his deficit is, though. He's legally blind. He can see us, but the door's a blur. Okay. Hearing. I want to know, can he read lips? Can I speak louder and can he hear me? Or is it just there's nothing? Can he read lips? And I want to make sure I'm talking at him at all times. If you're asking a question while you're doing something in your bag, getting out a blood pressure cuff, he may not hear you, or he may hear you but not be able to understand it and decipher it. Does anybody, right, in the household do sign language with him? Great. Can you sign for me? I don't do sign. I've got one gesture in sign language that's universal around the world, and it'll get my ass kicked in every country, right? But other than that, I don't know sign language, so I'll do that. And if not, if they're stone deaf, I write stuff out. Pain, where? I keep it, and I show it to them. So writing out questions is good. And don't forget that because they're legally blind does not mean they're deaf. You see this all the time. Oh, my father's blind. And immediately the person starts going, Mr. Smith, what's wrong tonight? And they're like, asshole, I'm blind, I'm not deaf, right? A lot of these people have better hearing. Their other senses have gotten better to compensate. So please keep that in mind. Speech, had a stroke, can't talk. Okay, we'll write stuff down back and forth. Yes and no questions. I'm gonna ask you a bunch of questions. Can you nod your head yes or no for me? Yeah, sure. Okay. Adding your personal thoughts or emotions into the equation can be good or bad. You're showing empathy, that's good. You're looking at the drunk guy who just ran into a car or ran over a baby stroller, right? We talked about that last night. Your feelings about that person can certainly make an impact on this. Cultural, we talked about last night, and language. So feedback is important. You giving them feedback and them giving you feedback, right? Human resources now, oh God. For the last 15 years, they've been getting this touchy-feely communications classes as part of HR training and management training. And it drives me insane. Okay, so Kevin, I understand that you're really kind of disgruntled with how your employees are treating whatever. Is that right? And they repeat every single sentence back to you. Drives me completely insane. But if I talk to somebody and I'm voicing a complaint and they go, oh yeah, okay, they nod their head. They go, oh geez, they shake their head like, oh man, I can't believe they were doing that. That's feedback, and I know that they understand what I'm saying, right? Verbal. Yeah, yeah, no. Oh, you don't say, right? Right. Husbands, if they're smart, they learn to do that with their wives. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, you don't say. Haven't heard a word they said, but they're happy because they think you're listening to them. Okay. Don't do that with your patients. Body language, super important. Ask for their feedback. Like I said, you revisit everything that you've talked about for the last 5 minutes. Did I miss anything? Right. And get their feedback on it. Teams are groups of people with a similar goal, and within EMS, that goal, of course, is good patient care or should be good patient care. And communications within the crew is all about knowing your limitations, right? I'm not going to be able to lift that guy. You need to tell the partner right away, hey, we're going to need help to lift this guy. Or, you have a problem dealing with whatever kind of patient. You need to be able to say something to your patient that lets them know, ooh, he's struggling with this one. Hey, why don't I take that one for you, okay? All right, so those are kind of the basics of back and forth communications. Eye contact is really important. I forgot to write that one down, but in some societies, some cultures, eye contact is considered rude. And in other ones, like pretty much the US, if you don't at least make consistent eye contact, you're being rude. It's kind of a thin line. If I'm making eye contact back and forth between the patient and his wife, and one of them consistently does not make eye contact with me, like the wife, I might want to get her alone for a minute and make sure everything's all right. Like she's scared to answer questions. She's afraid of what she might say is going to upset him. Or that's just her culture and she's uncomfortable with it. So I won't. I'll ask her questions and I'll look in her general direction. Okay, so eye contact. That one takes a little practice to get comfortable with. Okay? I'm sure you've all been around somebody or worked with somebody who gives you the eye. They glare at you all the time, right? And it makes you uncomfortable. So I try to break eye contact. I look at them. I look at what I'm doing. Even though I can do what I'm doing probably with my eyes closed, I'll look down. I'll look back up. I'll look at the wife. I'll look at the daughter while I'm asking her a question. But don't, so it takes a little practice. When we talk to dispatch, keep in mind that most dispatch centers, are pretty busy. Carroll County might be taking care of the fire and EMS for the area, and that's slow right now. But what we don't hear is they're also dispatching police departments and sheriffs, and that other side of the desk is super busy. So try to keep things clear and concise. No matter who you talk to, slow, clear, concise. When I was a young EMT and my first job was in Manchester, and those radios are busy there. I was taught no more than 30 to 45 seconds, and you have to get everything in that 30 to 45 seconds. So, and that's how everybody did it. And so one day I'm standing in the ER, I was doing some observation time in the ER, and one of the nurses answered the radio, and one of my partners called in. We're en route to a facility, constant alert times 3, 46-year-old male patient with complaint of left ankle pain, blah, 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 blah. And she's trying to write stuff down. Finally, she just threw a pen down and said, fuck this, and walked away. She couldn't keep up and couldn't. And I was like, ooh, that gave me an important lesson right there. So, hey, we're en route to your facility with conscious alert times 3, 46-year-old male patient, rolled his ankle on the ice. He's got swelling and pain in his left ankle. Nice and slow. I don't care about the fact that when he was 15, he had shingles or, chickenpox. I don't care that he's 65 now and had shingles 3 years ago. It doesn't pertain to this ankle. So I want to keep it short, clear, concise, and slow enough that they can keep up with me. Okay. I don't have to say everything. If you are calling the ER and you want to speak to the medical control physician, ask for that right at the get-go. And what I mean by that is Huggins Hospital, Action A2, Med 1, I need medical control, please. And they come back on the radio and they say, yes, Huggins, go ahead, Action. I need medical control, please. Are they present? Oh, no, hold on, I'll go get them. Guy comes back to the radio and goes, hey, it's Dr. Chin, go ahead. Then I know, because I don't want to say this 45-second thing, then have them go to the physician and say, hey, Kevin's bringing this, he wants to do this. I don't know, I don't think he needs it. And the dog goes, yeah, okay, then he doesn't. Because if you think about messages, we all did this at some point in elementary school, right? 25 kids in class, a secret starts on that corner and they whisper it to everybody in line. And by the time it gets to the other end of the room, it is nowhere near what you said at the beginning. Same thing with this. So I need med control. I want to say this one time. This is what I've got. This is what I've done. This is what I want to do. And he should come back, he or she should come back and go, yes, Kevin, go ahead, give 1 EpiPen every 10 minutes. So I've got my order from them. There's no diluting the message. At that point, I want to repeat the message back though. Okay, I'm going to give 1 EpiPen every 10 minutes as needed. Because remember, this person's busy and they may have heard you wrong also. And they may tell you something that doesn't at all sound like what you wanted. And they make mistakes. So if you repeat that back and go, okay, you want 1 EpiPen every 2 minutes, is that right? Oh no, I'm sorry, every 10 minutes. Okay, so always repeat back an order. All right. General radio rules. Who controls the radios in the country?
The FCC.
The FCC. Now, does the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, do they listen to every radio frequency 24/7? No. What happens is somebody calls them and complains. So like in 2018, 18, when the marathon bombing, right? That was 18, wasn't it? Or was that 13? 18. So 13? Yeah, well, yeah, oh yeah, 13. So David Ortiz drops an F-bomb on national TV. And I was like, did he just drop the F-bomb? And so I Googled it. 30 seconds after he said it, there were like 1 million hits of did David Ortiz drop the F-bomb? He and Nesson and the Red Sox as his employer could have been fined huge amounts of money for that. Because when they get a complaint, they will go back to the appropriate place and they'll pull tapes and listen, right? You drop an F-bomb on Carroll County Dispatch, which I did a couple weeks ago by accident. If they get a complaint about it, they can turn around and find me and find my company for it. They can also find Carroll County. Carroll County owns the license for that frequency. They give my company permission to use it, which gives me permission to use it. Now, David Ortiz, FCC made an official statement. We're not going to do anything. It was a spur of the moment, emotional response to a big event. Hey, we get it. If it was planned, he'd have probably gotten fined. I had a radio malfunction. I keyed the microphone to sign en route on a call, and my radio went dead. The screen went black, and I let my thumb off the mic, and I dropped an F-bomb about that. And radio died again because it had been doing that for a week and nobody was fixing it. Turns out the screen had gone blank and my microphone stayed hot even though my thumb was off the button. So I get to the call, and one of my former students, in fact, the AEMT student from my story about the motorcycle accident, same person. She's an AEMT now up in West Ospey. I'm walking up the steps and she looks at me and goes, oh, that radio's broken again, huh? And I went, what do you mean? Oh, that came over Carroll County loud and clear. I was like, ooh. Nobody else seemed to hear it except her. I'm sure Carroll County Dispatch did, but they understood, so I did not get in trouble for it. But if you're dropping bombs on a regular basis on the radio, somebody's going to do something about it. there is a set band of radio frequencies that you do not need a license to use. Those are the family radios, the little FMRS ones that you can buy at Walmart, right? You can buy a 10-pack, all your family has one. You go to Disney and hey, where are you? I'm over here, right? Those used to be a lot bigger before we had cell phones, but they're still pretty popular. The radios that are allowed to use those are very weak radios, so it should limit the amount of area that you saturate with that radio. So you're allowed to use those radios on those bandwidths without a license. Otherwise, you're supposed to have a license. Like I said, we are given usage on that frequency by the people who own the frequency. In this case, it might be the med radio channels, the hospital channels for the radios. Those are owned by the state of New Hampshire. Carroll County Dispatch owns that frequency. And when I say owns it, it's in their name with the FCC. Okay? You need to have backups for your backups. I can't reach the hospital on the radio. I'll use my cell phone. My cell phone, I don't have cell service either. Well, okay, I know if I get to the top of the next hill, I'll be able to get them on the radio, okay? The chapters talk probably a lot more than most of us care about what is the difference between, right, a portable, a mobile, a base station, and a repeater. I'd want to be comfortable with that. Digital versus analog. This is a type of radio that a digital radio can break a frequency down into smaller chunks. So 155.725, I think, is Stratford County. So the ambulance services, fire departments that use Stratford County use that frequency. That is analog. You can listen to that on your scanner. Digital, you have to have a digital scanner because it will take that 0.725 and it will break that down into smaller chunks like 0.7255. If you don't have a digital radio, you can't talk on that channel. So because our radio frequencies around the country have gotten so full as our societies have grown that they need to be able to come up with new frequencies. So that's how they did it. A digital radio also allows places like the police department to blur the radio traffic out. So if you do not have that specific sending and receiving program in your radio, you can't listen in, right? Why would that be important for the police department?
Typically they have names and addresses sometimes set over the scanner every now and then. You know,
Yep,
like they have to identify a vehicle or they need to do anything of that sort.
Okay, that's a good reason.
Personal safety on scene.
Yeah, and approaching the scene. If you think the bad guys don't have scanners, you're wrong, right? So if the bad guys hear SWAT 1's responding to 201 Valley Road, I know they're coming to my house, I can get ready for them, right? And not in a good way. So it gives them safety. That's a big one with that. All right. Tell you what, why don't we take 5 minutes? We'll come back. We will finish this up. All right. All right. So we're going to start talking to the hospital on the radio and just some helpful hints. I mean, obviously, some of you have never done it. And even though some of you are EMTs, depending on where you work, maybe you've never done it as well. But just some kind of helpful hints for you, some things that I've learned over the years. And I use the word pattern a lot. Get into a routine. Because remember, I talked about credibility. If you're all over the place and they can't keep track of what you're trying to say or where you're going, I see people walk away from the radios. I mean, you got to remember, I've worked, of my 35 years, almost 30 of it's been in ER-based ambulance services. So I've seen a lot of radio call-ins. I've heard a lot. There was this one guy I knew who he was very slow, very he absolutely the same every time, and it took him about 4 minutes to get through a radio report. And we would literally walk away from the radio, and you'd hear him say, "Any questions?" And somebody'd reach up and hit the thing, and go, "No, room assignment on arrival." One day I decided I'd had enough of that, and he did a 4-minute radio patch. "Any questions?" And I said, "Yeah. We lost you right after you said you're en route to our facility. Could you repeat all that, please?" And by God, he did. I'll bet you he did every freaking word in perfect order too. And he came in, he knew he'd been had, and swore at me right there at the nurse's station with the patient still on his stretcher. But he got better about it after that, you know. So nobody ever called him out on it. So hey, if I'm there, I'll call you out. Otherwise, people will just ignore you and go, "Oh, Jesus, it's Kevin again," you know. So keep that in mind. All right, now I made a few PowerPoints just so that it's visualized a little better. If at any point you want to do a screenshot, just let me know and I'll pause or go back. You can do a quick screenshot of whatever these notes might be. Whoops. Come on. So when you're calling the hospital, turn the radio to that channel. Whenever you talk on the radio, give that radio 45 seconds to a minute to make sure nobody else is talking. Because I have seen, oh, I gotta share my screen too. I have seen people get on the radio and they turn a channel and there's nobody talking, so they jump right on the frequency and they've walked over somebody. So if you are talking over somebody else, we call it walking over them. And they might have literally stopped to take a breath and they have a dying patient and you've just interrupted them. So always take that minute, make sure there's nobody else talking, and then call the hospital. The name of the hospital, who you are, and then what we do is what is either status or priority, doesn't matter. Status is kind of the old term. I use them interchangeably. So what do I mean by that? A priority 1 patient, life-threatening or limb-threatening patient. They take first priority for everything, whether it's the radio, whether it's a room in the ER, whether it's who leaves the scene first. Priority 1, life-threatening or limb-threatening illness. They could die or they could lose a leg, okay? A status 3, priority 3 patient is completely stable. You and I right now are status 3 patients, okay? Status 2, I look at it as, hey, it could go either way. The books have a lot of examples for each of these different things. Make it simple. Status 1, life or limb. Status 3, completely stable. Status 2, could go either way. That's the way I look at it. So Exeter Hospital, Raymond ambulance calling, Med 1, priority 3. Now, Med 1 is the channel we're calling on. And the reason I said Med 1 is because there are 10 med channels in New Hampshire. Most hospitals use just one, but a few of them use a couple. So like Wentworth Douglas, I don't know if they still do, but they used to use Med 1 for BLS, Med 5 for ALS. Exeter Hospital does everything on Med 2, at least used to. So that way there was less traffic on it when somebody was calling in. So whatever channel you're calling on, you should know. Oh, I'm calling it because on the radio it says, Concord Med 5. Okay, I'm calling on Concord Med 5. That way they know which channel to answer you on. So Exeter Hospital, Raymond ambulance, status 3 patient. You're waiting for them to reply. Now, the way they're supposed to reply is very similar to what you just said. Raymond ambulance, this is Exeter, go ahead. That way you know that the hospital you want to talk to answered you. And people think, I'm being overly simplistic about this, and that I'm kind of, oh Christ, of course you know who's answering you. And that's not true. I was in Frisbee one night working. I took a patient to either Dover or Portsmouth. I don't remember which one, but it was a sick patient. And I called that hospital on the radio, identified my service, identified the priority of the patient. And what I heard back was, go ahead, Kev. Right, I've worked this area a long time. A lot of people know me. Go ahead, Kev. Great. So I gave my report. Any questions? Nope. I walked into, I think it was Portsmouth, and they said, why didn't you call us? What do you mean? You've got a whatever. And I went, I did call. You guys answered. No, we didn't. And they actually went and pulled up, went to their radio and rewound their recorder. I never talked to them. Someplace in the state of New Hampshire or Maine, somebody heard my voice on the radio and assumed I was calling them and said, yeah, go ahead, Kev. So somebody someplace was expecting my cardiac patient, but it wasn't the place I was going. Okay, so that's why I tell people, make sure you hear them say, oh, this is the Elliott, go ahead, Raymond, whatever it is, okay? Now, so I like to give as early a notification as I can to these hospitals. Again, because I used to work for hospitals, right? When I was growing up as an EMT in Manchester, it was considered fun and funny to give them no notice. Like, it's Sunday morning at 5:30. Elliott Hospital, Derek's 3:45, status 1. Go ahead. Yeah, cardiac arrest, CPR's in progress. We'll see you in 40 seconds. And you could hear them screaming in the background. And once I started working in ER, I realized what an ass I was being. So I always, if I'm leaving the scene and I can reach them by radio from the driveway, I give them advance notice. If I'm on the highway with a trauma patient, I give them advance notice. I may not have every piece of information for them, but I'm on the highway with a trauma patient. I get on my portable radio, or I go to the truck and I get on Portsmouth Hospital, Frisbee EMS 1, and go ahead. We are on scene with a motor vehicle accident with a status 1 patient. We need a trauma team. I'll give you more of an update when we have them extricated in about 15 minutes. Any questions? Nope. And they're great with that because they know now. They send out their text, and it goes to anesthesia and the OR crew, and it goes to the surgeon, and it goes, Frisbee's got a trauma activation. Expect 45 minutes. And they can start heading that way. So the earlier you can give them. So I always tell them what I'm doing with them. So we are on scene. We are transporting to your facility with a conscious alert times 3, unconscious, whatever it is. Then they say, go ahead. And I say, we're in each facility with a conscious and alert times 3, the mental status, right? Are they answering questions appropriately? Do they know who they are, where they are, and what happened? That is conscious and alert times 3. 52-year-old female complaining of left-sided chest pain. Now, we talked about abbreviations last night. HPI, history of the present illness. So if she's got chest pain, I wanted to tell them briefly what she was doing when it started and what other complaints she has. 42-year-old female with left-sided chest pain started half an hour ago while mowing the lawn, has nausea, and has vomited twice already. Okay. There's another thing I want to tell them, which are called, pertinent negatives. Those are things we expect to see with something, but we don't. So a common chest pain complaint is shortness of breath. So patient's got left-sided chest pain since mowing the lawn half an hour ago. She's does have nausea, has vomited twice, denies difficulty breathing. Okay. Then I tell them pertinent past medical history, right? Patient has had Patient has been worked up for chest pain 3 times in the last month. Patient has had a heart attack already. Patient has a heart transplant, whatever it is. Something that's important to this event. She's 42 years old having chest pain. I don't care when her tetanus shot was last. I don't care that she had the flu 3 years ago. That's not pertinent to this. So pertinent past medical history, pertinent meds and allergies. You get some patients who have literally 30 or 40 meds that they take every day. They don't need to know all of the iron supplements unless they're bleeding, right? They don't need to know all of the vitamins. They don't need to know that, they're on this for their heart, they're on this for their blood pressure, they're on this for their breathing problems, okay? Pertinent medications. And do they have any allergies to things that are important to us, okay? Then I want to tell them my assessment. Now, normally for the EMTs, this class happens about 6 weeks from now, and you've got a little more knowledge of what we're talking about right now with assessments and stuff. So I apologize about that. So I don't want you to worry about having to know what kind of an assessment to do. But whatever assessment you've done, this is where I tell them on the radio. If they're having chest pain, I'm going to do what we call a focused assessment for chest pain. I don't need to go head to tail or head to toe like I do with a trauma patient. Okay, so I'll tell them about their neck and their chest and their belly, because that's all around the heart. Okay, so a focused exam. If they came off their motorcycle at 50, I'm going to do a trauma exam, and I'm going to tell them everything from head to toe. Now, we want to tell them their vital signs, blood pressure, pulse, what their respiratory rate is, what their oxygen levels are. If we know what their blood sugar is, we want to tell them that. So vital signs, okay? What did we do for treatment? And did anything change with the treatment? Okay? We have a patient with chest pain. The patient took one of their own nitroglycerin, and we've put them on oxygen, and their chest pain's gone. That's important to tell them. Now, ETA, estimated time of arrival. I've gone through all this, and I say, our ETA is 10 minutes. Do you have any questions? What is, for you guys that have been doing this a little bit, what do you either say, or what have you heard other people say with, do you have any questions?
Blood sugar every single time.
Okay.
I don't know why Concord Hospital selects that for every patient for some reason. So
Yeah, I got asked on a trauma patient the other day. The flight nurse asked me, "Do you have blood sugar?" No, he's not diabetic. I didn't do a blood sugar. Sorry. But yeah, blood sugars. But a lot of people will say, "Do you have any questions or instructions, or do you have any questions or orders?" I'm going to show you this slide now. Nurses being nurses. I love nurses, not all of them. I love most nurses. I've got lots of friends who are nurses. My wife's a nurse, right? I will be a nurse at some point. But if you ask a nurse on the radio, you're an EMT, and you ask a nurse on the radio, do you have anything you want me to do? Do you have any orders or instructions? They will take that subliminally as, I want you to tell me to do something. And they'll tell you something stupid. You've been with this patient for half an hour. They've listened to you for 30 seconds. Who knows this patient better? You do. I used to get in lots of conflict with nurses when I would say, do you have any questions or instructions? Yeah, I think you should turn the oxygen down. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I think you should shut the hell up, right? Because I know the patient better. But what I would typically say is something like, oh, are you med controlled today? No. Okay, thank you. It got the point across. I don't have to listen to you. The nurses we do not do what the nurses tell us to do. We do what medical control wants, absolutely. The nurses have no legal authority to tell us to do something on the radio. And we have no legal authority to listen to them, okay? So When I stopped asking them for instructions or orders, I never once since then have had somebody try to tell me to do something different. Got any questions? No, no questions. Action. Room 7 on arrival. Now, by asking them, do you have any questions? It makes them respond to you, so you know they heard you. If they don't reply, you don't know. So you got to ask them, hey, Huggins from Action, did you hear my report? And it just may be they don't know how to use the radio, so they're talking before they push the button. So
One
they
of the
say,
things,
yep.
oh, sorry, Kevin. One of the things that is pretty common is we say, do you copy? Did you receive?
Mhm.
And it just, the same thing you're saying. Did you get all the information?
Yep. So any questions? Did you copy any of that? That's fine. It's an endpoint also, so that they know you're done. And now they can say, whew, thank God that was a short one. Or, oh, thank God this is a quick, easy one. Someplace like Exeter might come back with a question and go, yeah, is this patient appropriate for triage? Yeah, they can go to triage. Okay, great, triage on arrival. Or they might say, room 7 on arrival. I always, same thing, I reply to them that I heard. I'm like, okay, room 7 on arrival, action clear, thanks. I've read things and taken classes where they say on the radio, not to say please, not to say thank you, because it's assumed that you're being polite, and it just takes up airspace. That may be so, but the majority of the people I talk to at hospitals are not trained as dispatchers, right? They're ER nurses, they're whatever. So I'm hey, thanks, action clear. They know I've heard them also. Now, as I said, medical control, if you need to talk to the ER doc, then you tell them right in the beginning. Action, Huggins Hospital, action, ambulance 2, status 2 traffic, I need medical control, please. And if they do not come back on and say, this is Dr. So-and-so, then I ask them, is medical control present? No, I need them, please. I'm going through this line. I'm going to tell the story one time, and I'm going to tell it to the person I need advice from. Okay. So, if you can call med control for any reason. In our protocols, there are certain things that you have to ask them for, but you're not sure, like, I think this is what's going on, and I think I should do this form, but I'm not certain. You can call the ER doc and go, hey doc, this is what's going on. I'm really not 100% certain. I've never seen this. What do you think about doing this? And that's perfectly acceptable. That conversation I'm going to have on the phone with them though. Okay. So most hospitals have a dedicated phone line that you can call in on. In some places, the ER doc carries that phone with them. And other times it just rings at the desk, but it's recorded also. So if there's an issue from either side of it, they can go back and figure out what happened. When we get to the end of all this, I'm going to put all of that up in one screen so you can see it a little bit better. Again, do it the same way every time. Now, documentation, oh, I've got it here as well, sorry. So if you want to screenshot this, go ahead, it'll be up for a minute. I use basically the same pattern on the radio that I use in my narrative on my run sheets. Because again, I don't miss things that way. I may write more for one patient than I do for another. I may say more about one patient on the radio than another, right? If it's a simple ankle, I'm going to keep it really simple. Okay, so PCRs, patient care records, around here, and when I say around here, at least Maine, New Hampshire, and Mass, I know are all electronic. Different companies might use different electronic records. Like Action uses one from Zoll. I hate it, absolutely hate it. The guys in Mass like it because it works differently for them. In the state of New Hampshire, they contract with a company called Tempsys. Tempsys is a nationwide electronic medical record. If you use Firehouse, because you're a firefighter full-time, if they use Firehouse, or Action uses, Easy PCR by Zoll, those have to be programmed to convert that information into a Tempsys report for the state. And this is where like Zoll's Easy PCR runs into problems. They have trouble meshing together sometimes. I would just rather use Tempsys. Some people don't like Tempsys. I like it because it's kind of intuitive. You can just click on things, click, 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 done. It will give you like, if you can't close it out yet, it will tell you why and take you to that place. Zoll will just tell you, you gotta check this box. Which page is that box on? There's 10 pages, So the nice thing is that New Hampshire EMS can pull a Tempsys report and look it over because there was a complaint, because there was a compliment. Somebody calls the state of New Hampshire and says, geez, this ambulance picked me up. They were wonderful. And they can look it up and say, oh, that was, Kevin and Chris. And we can send them a note. Hey, nice job. Congratulations, right? They can also use it for studies. They can say, how many times a year do our services give Narcan for heroin? How many times a year does our service give Narcan for carfentanil? How many times a year, right? So they can do that specifically for everything. And they can pull up a study. And with that, they can get federal funding. So it's pretty important.
Hey, Kevin,
Billing-
do you use Triage? It's like it's an app. Kingston's on it, so I just figured I'd ask.
No, I've never even heard of it. What?
I know
what
it basically reports to Tempsys and Exeter Hospital.
Okay. So the other thing that should happen is that so that program is set up so that when it's done, it automatically sends it to whatever hospital received the patient. Our Easy PCR is supposed to do that also. So when you click submit and it hits send, it sends the info to Tempsys, but it sends Easy PCR run sheet to the hospital.
Epping uses Triage to contact Exeter as well, but Tempsys is still something separate that we still have to fill out. So.
Oh, so this is just like a early notification kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't heard of it, so no, I've never used it. Billing.
It's interesting because you can like take pictures of 12 leads and stuff and send it right over to them.
That's cool. The thing, like our monitors nowadays should be set up to be able to transmit an EKG. We have all kinds of troubles with our Zolls. If our cell service isn't perfect, our hotspot in the truck isn't working right, we have a lot of trouble with that sometimes. So you can always, something like that, you can always shoot a picture of it, call the ER and say, hey, I want to text you this photo. Who can I send it to? And some of the hospitals are pretty good about letting you do that. I did that with Wentworth Douglas though. I said, hey, I've got a patient who's dead 10 minutes ago. Now they're not dead. I'd like to send you, I can't transmit to you. I've got a picture of the EKG. I'd like to send it to you by text. Somebody there got a phone number I can send this to. No, we don't do that. Do you have an email address for somebody in the ER, like secretary at? No, we don't give that out. Okay, fine. I guess I'll see you in 15 minutes and you can do what you want then. Very uncooperative that day. So we the technology is perfect. Our cell phones will take a picture of an EKG and send it to somebody, and it's perfect. It's a perfect copy every time, right? That drives me insane that some places won't do that. Other places, for a heart attack, right? An ST elevation MI. That is a true heart attack going on right now. It's should go to the cath lab and have vessels opened up. They have a phone number that you can send that picture to, and that phone number will automatically send it out to everybody that needs to see it. That is cool. I don't know anybody around here that's doing that right now, though. I know at Exeter, when they got an EKG, it used to get transmitted to everybody, but I don't know if it still does or not. Billing has access. So like my company does its own billing. A lot of places use a commercial billing company. So they have to be given access to the run sheets. Excuse me. So it's got all the demographics on it, and they can see what they need to bill for, what care was given, what can they bill for. So that's an important part of this. Administratively, we got to have all the demographics on a patient care record: name, age, date of birth, sex. It asks for race. Tempsys, Tempsys was one where you could ignore that, and I always did because I don't care. Unless it's something specific, say for a black guy for sickle cell anemia or for hypertension, because genetically they're more disposed to that, then I will pick whatever their choice for black, African American, whatever. But otherwise, a human's a human in my mind. My service with Easy PCR, I have to put that down. Okay. Now we've got a couple of different ways to do this. Let me see what this next one is. Oh, let me finish up with this one. Sorry. I got behind that. Sorry about that. Actually, this is my narrative. So we have SOAP, right? So what does, this is a way of writing a narrative. A lot of physicians use SOAP notes. I think it works very well for physicians. I personally don't like SOAP myself, but what does the S stand for?
Subjective.
Subjective. Subjective is what you can measure quantitatively, or what they tell us. Their skin is pink, their skin is pale. They tell us they have chest pain and shortness of breath. Objective, O, is what we see, but maybe can't physically. People put their assessment under here as well, though. So subjective, objective, assessment, and then plan. So subjective, patients complaining of chest pain, denies shortness of breath, has vomited twice. That's subjective. That's what they tell us. Objective, what we see. Patient is pale, cool, and sweaty. Their lung sounds are this. Their pulses are this. Their blood pressure is this, right? So O and A tend to kind of run together a little bit in my mind, and that's part of why I don't like it. Truly objective and assessment is there's a fine line, and I'm not certain that I can pick out that line. So that's why I'm not a big fan of it. But because the docs use assessment as their diagnosis, so they'll say chest pain, no shortness of breath, vomited twice. O is objective, what I can put my hands on, what my assessment is, and their assessment is patients having angina. We don't typically do that. And then P is the plan. So patient's going to be admitted to the ICU for this, this, and this. Or patient's being discharged from the ER with these prescriptions. I think it works very well in that setting. That's SOAP. I'd like you all to do one SOAP note, okay? And keep it simple. Make something up. Keep it simple. Patient tripped in the backyard. But just use what I'm going to pull up on the screen as a template, and plug all this in, okay? Now, chart, I love chart. It turns out that my run sheets are basically chart. I didn't know that at the time. The term chart came out after I started writing run sheets. Chart is their complaint. So C, chief complaint. H, history of the present illness, past medical history, including medications and allergies. The A is your assessment, my physical assessment. R stands for treatment. RX is a prescription, treatment, okay? So what did I do for treatment and what was the outcome of treatment? And then T is transport. What did we do en route? Where did we take them? Were there any issues en route? So that's chart. Again, I kind of like chart personally. Now, there's another one called cheated that one of the books talks about, and it's basically chart, but they add in an E and an ED. And the E just breaks out the exam and assessment a little differently. To me, it's the same thing. You don't have to do cheated chart. Just do one SOAP, do one chart. So when I do a run sheet, when I do a narrative, okay, I start out the same way. It's basically the same thing I do on the radio. Patient is A, conscious and alert, ×3, 42-year-old female, complaining of chest pain, nausea, vomiting, denies shortness of breath. Patient's had a heart attack in the past, onset while mowing the lawn a half hour ago. Patient is on these medications. This is my assessment. These are my vital signs. This is what I did for treatment. This is the outcome of the treatment. And then, so I've got unusual circumstances, and you can see I've got 2 arrows. So on the way into the hospital, the patient started singing to God, thinking they were about to die. That's an unusual circumstance en route. I'll put that down here. If the patient was entrapped in their car, then that's an unusual circumstance, and I put that in here. Patient was a 42-year-old female, seatbelted driver of a car into a tree, and was entrapped and had to be extricated with power tools. So that kind of goes in 2 different places, as you see fit. Then on my run sheet, I write report to the ER. So I say on my run sheet that I called the ER on the radio and gave report. Because there are times where you'll get there and they're so busy, somebody took the radio report and forgot to tell anybody else, and now they're mad at you for not calling ahead. And you can say, no, I did call. So I put this on my run sheet every time, so that later on, 2 weeks from now, Janet at Huggins is looking at a written complaint that Kevin brought a chest pain patient and didn't call. She pulls up my run sheet. Yeah, he did. He says so right here. She can then go look at the radio and pull up the recording and say, yes, he did. Okay. And it just helps solidify that what I'm saying is true. I will also then say, report was given to and care was turned over to the ER doctor in exam 7 on arrival. I then say, if nothing changed, there were no changes or incidents en route. If up here there was a change because of a treatment I did, I will say there were no other changes or incidents. Remember that everything you put in writing is what happened. If you do not put it in writing, legally it did not happen. You may have given the appropriate dose of Tylenol, but if you did not write it, it did not occur. So this is an extreme example. It happened to a friend of mine. On the run sheet, it says, en route, patient started taking off her clothes and was trying to sexually attack me. Okay, because that's what she did. I mean, he wrote it up. He made a report immediately to his ER doc, to the ER nurse, to his boss. He did all kinds of paperwork on it. But in his run sheet, he wrote exactly what she did and what she said. Because if he didn't, he's got nothing to fall back on when she says, hey, they raped me. That was her claim. They gang raped me in a parking lot. She made that statement as they were walking into the ER. So this sounds a little extreme and a little simple. There were no changes or incidents en route. 3 weeks later, well, you know, Kevin, she's claiming you raped her. Well, on my run sheet, I said nothing happened. And people go, well, of course you did. You can pull every one of my run sheets up for 35 years, and every one of them ends the same. This happened or did not happen. This happened or nothing happened. Ooh, this bad thing happened. So I can show a pattern of being honest with what's happened on my calls, and that will help me in the long run. So I always recommend that. I have here, I'm going to pull up one of my narratives. So and this was from a couple weeks ago, so you can see it. Oh, that's not the one I want. This is the one I want. Now, the other day, I talked to you about this regular patient that we pick up every day. Regular patients that get picked up every day, don't look at it yet. Regular patients that get picked up every day get treated usually as a pain in the ass. Literally walk to the truck, sit in the truck, do one set of vital signs, take them to the hospital. Remember what I said, that all of these regular patients, frequent flyers, whatever you want to call them, at some point they are going to die. And you have to do the right thing every time. And it does not happen that way on a regular basis. So you can see that I practice what I preach. And you can follow this. We'll break this up chart-wise in a minute too. So patient is a conscious, alert, and oriented ×3 female. Patient was seen by bystanders to lay, so this is an unusual circumstance, was seen by bystanders to lay down in the dirt next to the road. The bystanders called 911. That makes sense. Upon our arrival, patient was laying in the, it's supposed to say dirt, sorry, and stated she got tired, so she laid down. Patient denies any other symptoms. I asked her if she wanted to get up and go home or go to the ER, to which she replied, I guess I'll go to the ER. When I originally did this, there were quotation marks. I'll explain to you why those disappeared in a minute. When asked the last time she'd been seen, she stated last night. Patient was able to stand without assistance and pivoted to the stretcher. So I'm documenting that she was strong enough to stand up on the side of the road in the dirt, turn and sit on my stretcher with no problems. Patient states she was going to Dollar General, which is across the street. They refused her entrance, so she was walking home. Okay, so that's the C and the and this is the H. There's some H here and there's some H here. Chief complaint, history of the present illness. Past medical history. She's a poor historian as to her past medical history. She couldn't tell me what was wrong with her. She couldn't tell me what medication she was taking, or at least she didn't. So that's my C and H. My assessment, pink, warm and dry. Clothes are dirty and disheveled. I'm just being honest with what I see. Pupils are equal and reactive to light without nystagmus. Remember last night I said there's pearl and perla. So I just spell it out. Nystagmus is when your eyes track. And do they track together or apart? Do they click? They should go back. They should go forth. Her eyes tracked perfectly, so there was no nystagmus. No jugular vein distension. Her lungs are clear and equal bilaterally. Both sides, her lungs were perfect. Her abdomen was soft when I touched it. It was not tender. She did not guard, tense up her stomach, so I couldn't push on it. And there was no tenderness, rebound tenderness. Again, we'll get into more of this as we go through the class, but good distal circulation sensation motion, no neurological deficit. Skin turgor is good. So when you pinched her skin on her arm, did it immediately go back to normal? If it didn't, she's dehydrated. Oral mucosa, so the inside of her lips, is appropriately moist appearing. So I'm documenting a full exam on her, including hydration, including, do I think she's perfectly healthy? And a lot of people won't do that, okay? So that's my A. Now here's my R and my T. 12 lead EKG shows this, and this, right? Patient is transported to the ER without changes or incidents with report to the ER via radio. The patient was placed in a geriatric chair by the back nurse's station at the direction of the receiving nurse. Kevin, why did you put her in a chair, not in a bed? Because the receiving nurse told me to, okay? Report was given to her at this time. Now here's an unusual circumstance. Our company says if you use the monitor, you have to download the monitor to our run sheet so it can copy the vital signs and any tracings that you did with it. it would not download. So I wrote monitor 27 will not download. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? So you can see that even for a regular patient, I do this all the time. I do it the same way every time. Now, I said I'll show you why sometimes these things get changed around a little bit. I do not type well. Recently, I had somebody tell me, hey, Kevin, did you know that your Mac or any laptop pretty much will do dictation for you? No, I've had a Mac computer now for 15 years. I didn't know it would dictate. I thought that was a fancy program I wasn't buying. So whether it's Pages on a Mac or whether it is Microsoft Word, you can dictate. When you cut and paste your dictation from this into the run sheet, sometimes that conversion will do away with things like quotation marks. I did not double check that. You got to make sure you did. It changed a couple of the words around on me. So you have to double check it. One of the problems we have with EasyPCR is that if you do it on EasyPCR, sometimes the program will wipe out your narrative before it's saved. So it's garbage. But I can do this. I can hit start dictation, and you can watch my screen as I talk. I wait for it, wait for it. Patient is a conscious, comma, alert, comma, and oriented ×3 female. Sometimes it doesn't do it. Then it picks up when I do say something, right? So you got to be careful with this too, because somebody in the background at your station drops an F-bomb, it's going to show up in your note. All right, so you can do that. And you can do your whole narrative, okay? So that's how I do my narratives now. I dictate it, cut, copy it, and I paste it in my narrative. Sometimes I don't always go back and edit it like I should though. So make sure if you're gonna do this that you do. Now, where were we? So if you look at on the left side of this, that's a radio report. And you look at the right side, that's a chart documentation, chart form of a narrative. It's the same. I've told them what's going on, age, sex, chief complaint, right? So I find this easier. If my radio report and my written report follow the same guideline, the same pattern, I don't skip stuff. And some of the stuff you can skip is pretty important. Like you want to justify why you did something with oxygen or with CPAP, and you don't document how their lungs were because you forgot because you were skipping all over the place, that could come back to haunt you later, okay? I was doing QI on a paramedic's run sheet the other day. I can't tell you why he did anything he did. I can't tell you how he did anything because he didn't document that well either. It's awful. I'm left with, this guy's a moron, you know, and that's the way it looks. That's the way his run sheet looks. That's the way his reports look. So anyways, that's my big spiel on that.